Welcome to Future Talk. On today's program, we're going to talk about the Triple Helix Conference that recently took place at Stanford University. The three strands of the Triple Helix are academia, industry, and government, and the goal of the conference was to foster innovative methods of solving major world problems by promoting collaboration between these three strands. I have two guests. Keith Devlin is founder and executive director of Stanford's H-Star Institute, which hosted the Triple Helix Conference. If you listen to National Public Radio's Weekend Edition, you probably know him as the math guy, who always dispenses little nuggets of mathematical wisdom. Keith has won numerous scientific prizes, including the Pythagoras Award and the Carl Sagan Award for the popularization of science. He's written 31 books, and he's been recognized by the California State Assembly for his innovative work. Marina Ranga was co-organizer of the Triple Helix Conference and chair of its scientific committee. Marina is also a senior researcher at the H-Star Institute. She has a PhD in Science and Technology Policy Studies from Sussex University in the United Kingdom. She's a member of the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe's Expert Group on Innovation and Competitiveness, and she's also a consultant to the European Commission. Marina, what exactly was the Triple Helix Conference trying to achieve? What was the real purpose of it?
There are several purposes. The Triple Helix Conference is a major event in the innovation community. It takes place every year, every time in a different country, and we have been at the 9th edition this year for the first time in Silicon Valley.
When you talk about the innovation community, who is that? Is that disparate groups of people who are...
Not at all. You just mentioned academia, industry, and government. We are talking about a broad constituency encompassing academics, university managers, technology transfer offices managers, business people, consultants, policymakers, government officials.
So what did the conference do to bring all these people together?
They have a common purpose, innovation and advancing the knowledge and practice in innovation studies and in the real practice of innovation.
Is the purpose to study innovation or to promote actual innovation, to create real collaborations?
The conference is actually a major platform for dialogue, where people come to share the latest theories, the latest research findings, the latest experiences, to communicate their ideas and to share the ideas of their peers. And this broad spectrum, this broad focus on the three institutional spheres is really a wonderful opportunity to get diverse knowledge from various angles.
Was there pretty much equal representation between these three groups, industry, academia, and government, or is it mostly, one group?
We have a broad group from the university sphere, but actually this year, probably much more than in previous years, we had a broader community from industry. Government people have also been with us to a very large extent, so it was a very good combination.
Now, we're talking about theories of collaboration, because collaboration is not a new concept. So what are you adding that makes it different from what's been tried before?
You know, the core concept of the Triple Helix idea, metaphor, or theoretical framework, if you like, is that university in the knowledge society takes a leading place in the production of knowledge in everyday life of the community, because university has an immense capacity for producing knowledge and moreover for commercializing and using the knowledge results. So university now takes a more important place in this triad together with government and industry. It's no longer a support structure just offering students, it's a real actor.
Now you're saying the purpose of this is to foster collaboration to solve problems. Is there some specific set of problems that you're especially dedicated to working on?
There are problems at different levels because innovation has become nowadays such a complex issue to deal with. It starts from science and technology, it goes into research and development, it goes into education, it goes into labor market, it goes into employment and environment and ICT. So it becomes extremely comprehensive. You just said we want to solve the world's biggest problems. The world's biggest problems are actually made of small problems that we're trying to understand, to identify, and then provide solutions to.
You're talking mostly about technological innovations, trying to solve problems with more technology.
Technology is just one side of it. There's also a lot of basic science involved in it, although this, this differentiation between basic and applied is very blurred these days. There's also a lot of social interaction in it. There's also a lot of thinking about the philosophy of the concept, really, and the way it reaches society, the communication channels, the people who are promoting it, the way the message comes across.
I understand that there was also some gaming at the conference. There was a game that people played to foster innovation. What was that all about?
Yes, that was a novelty of this conference. It was called the Trilicious Triple Helix Innovation Game. It was the first time that we introduced this in the conference. And it was a sort of replication in small of the triple helix problems in large. It was a fascinating, challenging opportunity to solve a triple helix problem, a scenario.
So is it a role-playing game, or somebody plays an industry person? Or
Yes. We do try to solve triple helix problems with solutions from what we call the knowledge space, the innovation space, and the consensus space. And each of these spaces reflects to some extent, sometimes larger, sometimes smaller, the university, the government, and the industry. But not just sticking to these institutional spheres alone, but seeing that in a more combined way. So we played knowledge cards, we played innovation cards, and we played consensus cards, which have to do pretty much with governance.
So this is a board game?
Yes, this is a board game, yes. And people who play that in teams of 5 to 6 people or so have been really absorbed by the game, and they really try to provide the best solutions to the problem they chose.
So do you think that any specific insights came out of the conference that would be long-lasting?
Even the game produced very interesting solutions, very innovative solutions per se. The conference produced so many outcomes, it would be difficult for me to just say one or resume that in a few words. We had so many brilliant representatives of Silicon Valley people, of Stanford, internationally from 37 countries. It was such a broad exchange of ideas and such a lively interaction, both with academics, scientists, practitioners, students. Students have enjoyed that greatly. I have had a wonderful feedback from many students who said, "Oh, this has made such a difference to my professional life and my development."
We actually had a camera crew at the conference, as you know, and we shot some video there, and we're going to show some of that video. I interviewed a few of the attendees and panelists at the conference. So let's go ahead and roll that tape, and then we'll come back and talk some more. The conference took place in the Paul Berg Hall of the Li Ka-shing Center at Stanford University. The conference included a mixture of lectures, panel discussions, and games, all designed to foster collaboration between industry, government, and academia. Henry Etzkowitz is the president of the Triple Helix Association. He co-organized the conference, and he's the author of a book called The Triple Helix. I asked him about the objectives of the Triple Helix Association.
The objective is to further the analysis and use of the concept of the Triple Helix, which stands for University, Industry, Government Interactions.
Is it easy to get this kind of cooperation? I would imagine that university, business, and government might have different interests, different agendas. Do they have to submerge their own interests to join together?
Well, they might have to, but usually these collaborations are called together in a time of crisis. And so everyone has an incentive to come together to figure a solution to the crisis. And that was the situation even before the 30s depression. New England was already in a depression.
So what's the biggest crisis you're focusing on right now?
Right now, I think we're in another economic crisis. And that, again, calls for a coming together and invention of new ideas. And the new idea that they came up with then in the 30s was to move the economic development of the region to knowledge-based economic development. Research projects from the universities that had commercial and economic potential, to translate that into firms. And there were examples of that going on in New England from the late 19th to early 20th century in scientific instruments from Harvard, in the radio industry from MIT.
Martha Russell is Associate Director of Media X, a research organization at Stanford. I asked her about the relationship between Media X and the Triple Helix Conference.
The Triple Helix looks at the intersection of business, industry, and university. And Media X is Stanford's catalyst, business-facing catalyst into problems that focus on people and advanced communication technology. We interact with the business community, identifying the edge questions that are 3 to 5 years out, and bring those questions into Stanford University researchers and labs with a challenge question.
Can you give an example of one of those edge questions?
I can, yes. We're working on some very interesting problems now that are looking for the questions of the future on the fusion of virtual and real environments and on how to measure and improve the productivity of people who work with knowledge.
One of the beneficiaries of the collaboration fostered by the conference is the medical field. Ahmed Calvo is a medical officer in the Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, an agency of the federal government. Now, I understand that you're trying to develop new models of delivering health care. What are some of the new concepts in your model of health care?
Okay. Well, probably the most basic new real concept is the notion of an expanded care team. The notion that somehow you have a single doctor as maybe on average 15 minutes visits for 4 visits for a Medicare patient, really making a difference to their health outcomes is hard to believe because in practice most people spend their day living by themselves or with friends or with family. So we're interested in an expanded care team in a much more broader sense.
Does this have to do with social networking? For example, all of the players on this team could be on Facebook or something similar, and they can all communicate instantaneously together.
Exactly. So there are possibilities of combining people's interests and choices of communication, i.e., things like Facebook, with trust. To be able to really make a difference in a person's life and their decisions, that person needs to have real trust that they're part of your team and they're not actually trying to hurt you. The flip side of this is people don't always know all the individuals that might be of real help to them. And so social networking and use of telecommunications and such to help that might allow you to meet other people that truly would make a difference to you.
Another presenter at the conference was Slavica Singer, a UNESCO professor of entrepreneurship at the University of Croatia. I asked her about the importance of collaboration.
But I think that in next decades, probably the most important thing will be collaboration, because any country in the world does not have enough resources, enough commitments, enough knowledge to solve crucial problems in the world. So, especially for small country like Croatia we have to collaborate between the university, government and business sector, and of course civil society, to find a way how to solve high unemployment and the situation where people actually do not have expected quality of life.
Does this assume international cooperation?
It's also cooperation on all levels, on a local level, on national level and international level. But for this, the most important thing is to develop trust. If we do not trust each other, we cannot collaborate.
So that was some of our video from the Triple Helix Conference. Keith, that last speaker said something about the need to trust each other, and if we can't trust each other, we can't really collaborate. And she's talking about internationally between different countries. The question is, can we really trust each other?
Well, of course,
In a sense, we always have. That is what makes human beings unique, is everything we do depends on collaboration, and collaboration builds on trust. The interesting thing that's happening now is the scale. Trust used to be in the village, in a small thing, and we had constant contact, we had regular eye contact, regular interactions, body language. So trust was easy to develop and easy to maintain and sustain. Now we're collaborating and interacting on a global scale, sometimes through video conferences, sometimes through our computers, sometimes through our phones, sometimes through email. And all of these technologies have put themselves in this human network. And we are now, as a race, as a species, learning how to extend that trust that evolved in a small context and apply it in a big context. And it's very, very challenging. I mean, this is actually what the H-Star Institute, it's the institute that was the host for the Triple Helix Conference.
Well, tell me a little bit about H-Star, because you're the founder of that, and you're the executive director of it. What is the purpose of it? What does that stand for, first of all?
It's
H-Star?
human sciences and, excuse me, it's human sciences and technologies, advanced research. Human sciences deliberately comes first, because although a lot of what we do focuses around technology, both how we design technology and how we use it, the really important questions are about how people respond to technology and how technology needs to be built to respond to the needs and the predilections of people. So we really have to understand people much better than we do in order to build better technologies and to make better use of them. And when they're interjected with human societies, it becomes a crucial issue, that point of trust that was just raised.
Well, how do we understand people? Do we spend as much time and money trying to understand people as we do trying to understand electrons, for example?
Depends where you live. Here in the United States, particularly on the West Coast, we focus on the technology, often at the expense of the people. And yet look what's happened. We've built these technologies which are incredibly about social interaction. You know, we've got Twitter, we've got Facebook, we've got Google, we've got Yahoo, we've got all these companies within 10 miles of where we're sitting now. Yes, they are technology companies at one level, but when you really look at them, they're not technology companies at all. They are social companies. They're all about mediating human interactions.
Well, when we talk about collaboration, don't different people often have conflicting interests? Even if they're willing to collaborate as a matter of principle, they have different goals. So industry might have very different goals than government, and government might have different goals than academia. Do you have to reconcile the goals to have a true collaboration?
Yeah, and it's even more complex, because it's not just the different types of people, but we have different races, we have different nationalities, different cultures, and all of these different groups can communicate on a multiple scale instantly. It's as if billions of people were suddenly crushed together in a small room. We don't know how to cope with that. We're having to understand how to cope with that, and we have to put mechanisms in place based on learning and understanding to figure out how to make this really work.
Well, is the idea that like all of humanity has to come together as one, or do we simply accept the fact that mankind has always been divided into competing factions, and that will probably continue to be the case, and we'll live with that, and we'll collaborate within our group and not so much?
Well, the simple answer is we don't really know what's going to happen, because the naive picture is you take people and you put technology in, and technology sort of makes some sort of a difference between them. But actually, the moment you put the technology in, the people behave differently as well. You introduce technology to solve what you think is one problem, but the moment you introduce it, the game has changed. And you're then into a completely new world.
Well, we're talking about using technology to solve problems, but some people might say that technology is the cause of many problems. For example, we're trying to use technology to prevent adverse climate change, and you might say that it's technology that is the cause of climate change. Is the solution to the problems caused by technology more technology?
Well, more technology is going to happen whether it's a solution or not. And what always happens is the technology solves some problems and raises other problems. It's like throwing pebbles into a pond. You create a lot of ripples, and the ripples at first look very chaotic, but after a few minutes, it begins to settle down and it becomes rather elegant. That's what's going to keep happening over and over again every time we introduce new technologies. Every time there's a new whiz thing comes out of Silicon Valley, society will ripple. In the process, governments can be toppled, as we've just seen recently.
Now, Silicon Valley is kind of a unique place. You might say that there's a lot of collaboration here, a lot of sharing of all kinds of information. Does this translate to other countries? For example, other countries have tried to replicate Silicon Valley, but not too much success. Marina, what do you think about that? Do you think that what we have here can be replicated elsewhere, or does it require unique conditions which we can't quite define?
Marty, we discussed about that for 4 days during the conference, and I think we've heard all the opinions possible. To sum up, I think it would be fair to say that it's always good to take inspiration from other places, to share good practice and bring good people and experienced and knowledgeable people from elsewhere to your place. But it's always very important to know exactly your place, your conditions, your situation, and try to adapt, to learn from others, but also keep in mind the specific conditions of your context.
Well, some of these problems are kind of difficult because we were talking about the Trilicious game, which is a board game, and it would be nice if the world's problems could be solved as easily as moving pieces around on a board. But what the game doesn't take into account is things like the human ego, the desire of people to be above other people, the desire to gain their goals at the expense of... And these are the real problems, the fact that some people want what they want and they will stop at nothing to get it, no matter who is in their way. Are those concerns part of what you're looking into in the research?
There's always a duality between collaboration and competition, and that doesn't mean that competition is not good. Competition is good, competition drives forward, competition creates more potential for advancement. But from a Triple Helix perspective, the real challenge and the real benefit is to create a confluence of interests rather than a divergence of interests. And one way to do that is to create win-win situations where you align the different cultures, the different interests, the different languages of the partners across the institutional spheres to align them to meet common objectives.
So is it a matter of creating sort of a common culture so that everybody in this culture kind of relates in a certain way, there's certain behavior that's okay, certain things that would be too disruptive, so you don't do that?
I think the underlying dimension of this dialogue is the fact that the different parties, the different partners in the discussion have different pieces of knowledge. And by putting together this various knowledge, then the team that is thus created manages to achieve new things, to take a step forward towards the objective they have set for themselves.
Now, Keith, Triple Helix is one attempt to foster collaboration and innovation. Are there many other such attempts, and if so, do they complement each other or are they competing with each other?
One of the reasons I was very intrigued, I had never heard of the Triple Helix concept until about 2 years ago when I met Henry and Marina, and what intrigued me was it sounded awfully like Silicon Valley. And in fact, Henry Etzkowitz just said it usually takes a crisis to make this happen. The Cold War is what led to Silicon Valley. It was partly government planning, but a lot of natural evolution. If you look at what happened here in this location in the 50s and 60s, it was a lot of government money together with universities, Stanford, Berkeley, San Jose State later, and industry, all acting together. Now the government sort of kept at the background and just provided money. They weren't deeply involved, at least not, I mean, they were behind the scenes. But we had a Triple Helix model going on here. That is what, in US terms, in Californian terms, the Triple Helix is Silicon Valley. We've had one for 50 years now.
Now, what really drives collaboration? Does that start with one person who says, I have a goal, and I can only achieve it if I can collaborate with other people, so let me seek out the people I need to collaborate with?
Yeah. Silicon Valley is the most competitive and the most collaborative place you'll find on the planet. It's totally about competition and collaboration. We compete with each other, but in a very, very collaborative... It's like playing a soccer game. You're fighting against each other, but the game only works because you're actually collaborating in that game.
But isn't there also a creative process? Nobody really knows where new ideas come from or why some people constantly have new ideas and most people never have new ideas. Is that the driving force of all progress, the fact that some people think up new ideas?
Absolutely. You can have ideas coming from everywhere. It is important to have ideas and efforts to start something from bottom up, from top down, from sideways. Everything is possible. The world is complex.
Has any research been done in how an environment can be made more conducive to ideas. Like people have tried to replicate Silicon Valley without that much success. Do we know enough about human beings to say, well, here's what will get people to come up with new and interesting ideas?
There are different ingredients, you know, to creating this kind of collaborative and competitive and innovative environment. And the ingredients are, of course, good education, a good environment for learning, good communication, important flows of money, capital. Silicon Valley has, of course, the important venture capital community, and of course the very good knowledge education potential of Stanford. So many governments, especially in Europe, have tried to replicate this, and they've tried to put together some of the ingredients, but something was always missing.
Let me ask you this, because we're running out of time. What are your most hopeful, realistic expectations of what can be accomplished through Triple Helix? What are your expectations of what might actually come out of it? Neither one of you can answer that.
I think it's very important to recognize that Triple Helix brings a new angle, a new perspective on this collaboration that used to be and still is in many parts of the world a sort of exclusive partnership between industry and government. Well, now we do have another player, an important player, which comes to the fore with important resources, the students, the academics, the knowledge, the research findings that get commercialized, new ideas to the world, and also a better understanding of the social problems, because most often in the corporate sector, these social aspects tend to be somehow neglected.
Keith, any last reflection before we run out of time?
Yeah, if you look through history, each age in history there's had to be a fuel that generated things. There was coal, there was oil, we've had electricity, we've had water. We are in the knowledge society. The fuel that drives that society is knowledge, and the universities are the place where you mine and create knowledge. We are the equivalent of the coalface in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution.
Great, and I think that's a very good place to end the show. Thank you for watching. You've been watching Future Talk with my two guests, Marina Ranga and Keith Devlin. Be sure to tune in next time and visit our website, www.futuretalk.net. For Future Talk, I'm Marty Wasserman, and we'll see you next time.